thing for most of us, because there's a cost. There's a price that goes along with us really, truly being good. And in some ways, of all the Beatitudes, this one is the most challenging. Because the question is, do you really, really, really want righteousness? Or do you really want things your own way? The interesting thing is, it talks about food and talks about water. It's also the Beatitude that has the most comfort, because it says, they will be what? Filled. In other words, your need is going to be met. In some respects, for you and I, it's the man who does good things who is comforted, but it's the one who longs for it with his whole heart. It's the person who's really, really thirsty to get to the heart of God. When I was a kid growing up, we had a lady at my church. We called her Grandma B. Her name was Bertha Billington. And Bertha lived on a couple of $100 a month, Social Security. And she had lived in the same house for 60, 70 years. She didn't have a house payment. She had no bills. And her kids every once in a while would help take care of her. Grandma B, her thing was, when you'd see her after church, she'd say, what can I pray for? What can I be praying about? That's all she ever wanted to know. She wouldn't say, how are you? How's your family? It was always, what can I be praying about? What can I be praying about? And then every once in a while, she'd walk up and say, I've been praying about what you asked me, and this is what I'm getting. This is what I'm getting from the Lord. And the part that was bizarre is, some people are able to discern the will of God better than others. There's a gift called discernment. And some people know how to pray for the will of God better than others. And it was amazing to me how many times she would walk up to me and say something that would then come to pass. As we're getting ready to move, and I'm going through some stuff and cleaning out my desk, and I found a letter that she wrote to me after I had left Michigan. And just reading it, I felt like I was in the presence of somebody who knew what it was to be hungry and thirsty after the heart and the mind of God. Because she understood it. She got it. And sometimes, I don't want it that bad, to be honest with you. I'd rather read so far and take 80% of God than 100%. Because 80% for me right now fills me up. What this Beatitude is saying is, it's not enough to just want to talk about goodness. You got to want it with everything you've got, with your entire complete being. Blessing comes to the people who, in spite of their failures and failings, they still hold to a passionate and obedient love for Christ. This is what this means. This is the analogy I put in. You can be a really bad musician, but be deeply in love with music. Have you ever known somebody that loves to sing but really shouldn't? You know what I mean? And the same thing is true with our relationship with God. We can be passionately in love with Him, and we're still going to mess up. We're still going to do things that disappoint Him and us. And the church, as a whole, has pointed out people's failings rather than their heart. And on the same respect, we've pointed out the good things that people do, and that they've earned positions of leadership or authority based on what they do, but they got a bad heart. And what Jesus is trying to say is, it's not just enough to want to be good. You got to pursue it with all that you have. And when I get up and I mess up, it doesn't mean I don't love God. It just means I messed up. Just like the person who can't sing that ought not be singing, but they love music. They love music. This is the cool part about this particular beatitude. In the Greek language, there's a verb form. It's called partitive. And partitive would be translated like thirsting or hungry. In other words, the beatitude would read, I am thirsty for some water. I am hungry for some bread. But in the specific language here, the word for righteousness is in a form called accusative. And the way this would read is, I am hungry for the whole loaf. I am hungry for the whole pitcher of water. Not that I want some, but I want all of it. So when you put it together, this beatitude really means, happy are those who hunger and thirst for the whole of righteousness. For all of it. For complete righteousness. What that says to you and I is that partial righteousness is not enough. We just sang, holiness, holiness, what I long for. Holiness is what I need. Righteousness, righteousness. That's tough, man. That's tough to get rid of that last 20% of me, or the last 10%, or even the last 2%. Because if I do that, people aren't going to understand. They really won't. People won't understand. When we pursue righteousness, why we would forego certain things or avoid certain things, people won't understand. But the pursuit of righteousness is a heart issue, not a behavior issue. Because anytime it's a behavior issue, we will fail. It's a heart issue. The second one for today says, blessed are the merciful. They will be shown mercy. This is a great concept throughout the New Testament. Forgiveness. Forgiveness begets forgiveness. And you and I are to be forgiving people. If you have not done anything that you deserve to be forgiven for, we just need to talk to your family. Okay? We all have things that we need to be forgiven for. And we need to be quick to be people of forgiveness as well. And just like usual with the Greek language, there's more to this particular beatitude than when we first read it. To be merciful is connected to a Hebrew word which means the ability to get right inside the other person's skin until we see things with their own eyes. The ability to get in their skin. We call that sympathy. And sympathy is actually the combination of two words, which means to experience together. Now we have empathy and we have sympathy. Do you know the difference? What is sympathy? Sympathy is when I feel your pain, right? I'm trying to imagine what you're going through. Empathy is I'm sharing your pain. There's more. There's more to it. I want to participate in your pain. And we need to be people of sympathy, people of forgiveness. And here's why. Here's 3 reasons. There are benefits to being sympathizers or people quick to forgive. It makes forgiveness easier. It makes forgiveness quicker when we try to get inside somebody else's mind. One reason is because we'll feel sympathy in the right way, or we'll respond in the right way. You say, well, how could sympathy be bad? Well, there's a story about Jesus and Mary and Martha, where Jesus is going out, and Mary and Martha meet him, right? And one of them is cooking like crazy, and the other one is sitting at his feet. Well, Jesus needed rest. He wanted to chill out. And so even though there was a response of being busy and getting things together, that really wasn't what Jesus needed. So even though she was trying to sympathize, she didn't sympathize in the right way, so she responded in the wrong way. The third reason is this. If sympathy means to get into the skin of people, isn't that what God did? In Christ? Isn't that what Christ did? That He came here, saw things with our eyes, put our skin on, and He came here and sympathized with us. The Bible even says in Hebrews that the things we've gone through, that He experienced all of our temptations. That doesn't mean He experienced the temptation of gambling at a casino in Vegas. Okay? Because they didn't have Vegas back then. Unless you watch the History Channel. They think they did back then. Okay? But what it means is He knows what it is to be rejected. He knows what it is to be made fun of. He knows what it is to be loved. He knows what it is to be to have joy. He knew what it was to have sadness. Christ experienced everything. And through sympathy, God put skin on. That's an amazing picture of what it is to have sympathy. That Christ would leave eternity to come here to be you and me for a little while. There's a story of a lady named Queen Victoria who was married to Prince Albert. You might have heard of them. And there was a gentleman they called Principal Tulloch and Mrs. Tulloch. And Mrs. Tulloch became a widow when Principal Tulloch died. And Queen Victoria came out of her castle